Now, I know it's late for resolutions, but mine was to not buy anything new from the thrift store until I used up some of what I had. So today's video, I'm going to be using up some of my stash to make some winter decor. Now, this really isn't my stash, but it probably would be if I had the room. Now, this is from my lantern collection because I cannot pass up a lantern. So our first DIY is going to be turning this lantern into some winter decor. And I'm using my Big Shot, some snowflake dies that I already owned, and some Cricut vinyl to cut out some snowflakes. I have already cleaned the lantern, so I just need to remove the glass. And I want to make sure that I don't have any fingerprints on my glass because I'm going to be using Armour Etch to etch the snowflakes onto the glass. And if you've never done this before, it's such an easy technique. Now, it's been a while since I used Armour Etch, so I did need to read the instructions just to make sure I remembered it correctly. And right here, I'm just taking the stencil that I made and I'm going to apply it to the glass. So I finally got the design down, and here I'm just making sure that it still looks like a snowflake. And now I'm wondering, why did I think it was necessary to remove the fingerprints before I started this step? So you can skip that one. And here I'm just making sure that everything is down. I don't have any bubbles because I don't want any of the etching cream to get under the stencil. And once you get all your stencils down, I'm just using an old paintbrush and I'm dabbing on the cream. It's pretty thick, but you do need to go over it a couple of times and you'll see what it looks like here in a minute when I have it just the way I want it. And then you just let it sit for, I think it's like just a minute. I let it sit longer because I just always feel like a minute, really? And that size of the etching cream, I looked it up at Michael's and it's $13.99. Now it's been a couple of minutes. I have taken it to my kitchen sink and I have washed that all off, all the etching cream off, and now I'm removing the stencil. And I always panic at first because when the glass is wet, you don't see the etching, and I always think it didn't work. But then once you dry it off, you can start to see the design. So now I just need to take out the rest of the glass from the lantern, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing. And here's the design that I put on. These are the two side pieces of glass. And here's the glass covered in the etching cream. And I did spray paint the lantern in Rust-Oleum French beige. And here's how it turned out. Now for this next DIY, I'm going to take the snowflakes that I cut out in the last DIY and use them to make some more winter decor. Now this is a pickle jar, and I'm applying the snowflakes to the jar. My original plan was to paint the jar. So I first sealed it with this Rust-Oleum 2x clear sealer. And when I was done, so this is when I'm done, and I thought, you know what, I kind of like it like that because I want to put some candles in there. And I thought, oh, that might look pretty instead of having me paint it. So now I don't know how this is going to hold up because it's on glass and glass is a slick surface, but so far it's okay. And it's not like I'm going to be doing, moving this around a lot. So we'll see. And it's only a jar and some vinyl that I would have just had left over. So it actually turned out pretty cute. So you'll have to let me know what you think. And to finish off the jar, I used this, it's like a decorative string in a gray color to just finish off the top of the jar. And I just put one of those little candles inside, and here's how my pickle jar turned into winter decor. For the next DIY, I am going to make over this little wooden tree, and I'm using one of my favorite techniques. I don't do this that often, but I just think it always turns out so pretty. You just take a stencil and you apply texture paste over it. And if you don't have texture paste, you could always use spackling. And so I'm going to put snowflakes all over this tree. I let the texture paste dry overnight, and the next morning I painted it in Wise Owl chalk synthesis paint in the color Dried Thyme. I was having a little trouble getting the paint down into the crevices with my larger paintbrush, so I used a little artist's paintbrush to get down in all those little crevices. And I also painted the back. Because I was using chalk paint, I needed to seal it, so I used Annie Sloan clear wax to seal the chalk paint. And then I used white wax to bring out all the details in the snowflakes. And I'm using DIY white wax. And you can see why I love this technique. It just makes everything look so pretty when the details starts to pop out. I used a soft cloth to wipe back the extra wax. And this project was done. For the next DIY, I'm making a winter book stack. The first thing I needed to do was apply spackle to the embossed letters on the back of the book, on the spine of the book, because I'm going to be using decoupage paper, and I wasn't sure if the letters would come through the decoupage paper. Once the spackling was dry, I sanded down all the tops of the books. And then I painted all the books in Fusion Mineral Paint in the color Blue Pine, which is probably my favorite color of paint. Next, I created this graphic in Canva. I downloaded it and then I opened it in Word and I sized it to fit the books because I wanted to make sure that the little faces on the cardinals landed correctly on the books. And I'm using my ruler that gives the paper a nice uniform torn edge. And watching this video while I'm doing the voiceover, I don't know why I didn't glue the books together at this point first. But there was a reason I did that. I just can't remember why right now. And I was a messy painter and I got some of the blue paint on the pages, but I will fix that at the end and you can't even tell. So right here I am using Redesigned by Prima decoupage gel. And I worked from the center out, making sure that those birds' faces were right in the center of each book. And I'm using plastic wrap to make sure the paper goes down smoothly with no wrinkles. I'm not sure what this thing is called. I think it's a box cutter. I just made sure I had a fresh blade in there, and then I sliced through the decoupage paper. And as you can see, the books did kind of stick together, but I think this is why I didn't glue the books together ahead of time, because I thought I might need to be able to get under the decoupage paper on the sides of each book. And once everything was dry, then I glued all the books together. I added some ribbon and I had this pick that had a few different types of greenery on it. And I just cut off what I wanted and I trimmed some down to make it kind of fit better. I made a little arrangement at the top because I really wanted the cardinals to be what stood out on the Bookstack. And to clean up the pages, I used Waverly chalk paint in the color Cashew. And I dry brushed the paint over the little mistakes. And it actually, when it was all dry, you couldn't even tell. And here's how my winter book stack turned out. When I was pulling the different pieces and trying to decide how my vignette was going to turn out, I really didn't want to use any red, but I think just this little pop of color works. But you'll have to let me know what you think. For the next DIY, and I don't even know if I should call it a DIY because I really at this point just want the snowflake. I get that snowflake off and I'm going to paint it in the color Cashew. And I did paint the snowflake front and back. Next, I had thrifted this Longaberger basket, and I love Longaberger baskets, and I normally don't do anything to them. I don't paint them, but this one was pretty stained. So I decided to use the steel wool and vinegar recipe to age this basket. And to make this recipe, you just put in like 1 steel wool. I'm trying to pronounce it better than I did in the last time I used this recipe, into a container of vinegar. You let it sit a few days, and then you just apply it to the basket, and you will see how it ages it. I just applied the solution with a chip brush, and it started working so fast. By the time I made it all the way around the basket and then went back around it again on the outside to get any drips, you can already see how dark the basket is getting. So you can see here where it started and how dark it's getting in me applying the first coat of this solution. Well, I now decide that I want to paint the candlestick, so I use a wet wipe to see if any of that red paint is going to come off. So I decide to seal it with this shellac, and then I painted it in the same color that I painted the tree, the dried thyme. You never know where you're going to get some inspiration, and mine came from that sock. So I took a tuna can and I cut a piece of felt to go around the bottom of it. And then I had one stray sock that had this very wintry design on it. So I decided to take that design and put it around the tuna can. I cut off the bottom of the sock. And then I glued that piece of felt down so it has a nice finished bottom. Now on the top, I left the top of the sock because I just pushed the candle through there and then I tucked it in, and so it made the candle stand up nice and straight. And this is how it turned out. And here's my Longaberger basket with the snowflake. And I just wired the snowflake on with some wire that I had rusted, and I do see the top of the handle doesn't look so great, so I'm gonna go back and try to fix that. And that little piece of fleece fabric hanging out of my basket, that was my inspiration for the color scheme for my winter decor. I made 2 pillow covers out of that fabric and they turned out so cute, but the video that I shot was just not good. So the DIY didn't make it in, but here are what my pillows look like. And they were super easy to make, so if you want to know how to make them, just leave me a comment down below. And I even had enough fabric left for a throw. My house was built in the 90s, and when we moved in, this area with my winter vignette is where the TV was supposed to go. It's an alcove over the fireplace. And I kept moving everything around, trying to cover the old cable hookup. So I included some of these before shots, trying to get it just right. With that cable outlet hidden, I really need to do something about that. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.